Hi folks, it's Mark Smith with Family Tree Brand Life Coaches. It's been a while since I've been able to make a video. I've been getting settled in our new home and unpacking boxes. But I do have a video today that I wanted to share. Probably my personal most viewed top 3 or 4 videos in the past year have been about the topic of borderline personality disorder. I think there's a tremendous hunger out there for accurate and articulate communication and teaching about this disorder. And as you know, I just share my experience. So I'm going to be talking more about my childhood and my relationship with my mother. I had made a video, 10 ways borderline mothers hurt their children. And so the title of today's video is 12 more ways borderline mothers hurt their children. And so I'm just gonna share from my experience, and the last video has been very, very successful and has touched a lot of people's lives, and so I'm just gonna keep with that same format. Now, folks, I'll also say that anything I've talked about related to borderline personality disorder has also gotten more dislikes and negative comments than any of my other stuff. And so there's 2 theories I have about this, and I'm open to the notion of both of them. One of the theories is, perhaps my experience with my fiance colored me a bit, and maybe there was some edge in some of the videos. I'm open to that. I've been re-watching them and sort of scrutinizing whether that might be true. It's also might be true that there's a lot of people out there who have been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder who may not actually have borderline personality disorder, and they are somewhat defensive about it. They feel shamed. They feel shamed by the therapist who diagnosed them. They feel shamed by the insurance company. They feel shamed by having to be on medication. They feel shamed by the entire system. They feel shamed by me when I talk about the issues. And I just wanted to tell you folks, a lot of you probably have complex PTSD and not borderline personality disorder, and you've been misdiagnosed, and some of you might be on the spectrum of having borderline personality disorder, but you're not a full-blown cluster B soulless person who's out harming empaths. So please don't be shamed. Please don't feel shamed. There's nothing that I'm going to share that it's my desire to shame a borderline. I'm just trying to help you if you grew up with a borderline parent, or if you're in a relationship with someone who has borderline personality. I'm just trying to help you. I'm not trying to put down borderlines. I'm not trying to put down my mom. When I work with people in therapy, I tell them good therapy is about truth. And sometimes truth can be scathing. And it's my job to tell people the truth, and I try to do it as respectfully and kindly as I possibly can do it. But sometimes that hits somebody's shame button, no matter how I do it. So I'm not going to be grinding an axe or projecting issues in this video, I assure you. So if it starts to touch on your shame. If you start to feel shamed, then take a deep breath and process it. Do some journaling. Talk about it with a friend. Talk about it with your therapist. Because it's all about, in recovery, it's all about knowing the truth about your issues, even if it's hard to take a look at. So what I covered in the last video, the one with the picture of the painting of my mother, the two-parter, that I was going to share a poem, and then the video stopped and the poem didn't come, and then I put it in the second one. Here's the 10 woundings from a borderline mother that I talked about. Them not attaching, being unstable, being incompetent and an underachiever, or as I said, clowns, parentifying you as a child, constantly threatening abandonment, actually abandoning you, devaluing, raging, being self-absorbed, and attracting predators and other cluster B individuals. So that's what I've covered so far, but let's add 12 more ways that borderline mothers can hurt their children. Number one is you don't learn how to be dependent. You learn that you're the only person that you can truly trust. You don't know how to lean into people because there's such chaos and instability when you have a borderline parent that you grow up really quick and you become a superhero of sorts, in a good way and in a bad way. It's a good way, and it helps you to accomplish a lot in school and in career. In a bad way, in that you don't know how to lean into people. You don't know how to be intimate. So many times you develop a shell around yourself, and then you're in a relationship and your partner says, dude, you're not available. You disappear. I'm newly married and happily married, but my wife sometimes pulls me aside and says, haven't really connected in a while, dude. You got that wall going on. Come on over here and let's talk, and let's find out what's going on with you that is stimulating this walled off behavior. So a healthy child has dependency needs, and they consistently get them met. A child of a borderline parent meets their own needs, and many times the needs of their borderline parent, and they just don't know how to be vulnerable. Number two, your borderline mother, if your father is around, she'll cut his balls off. She will emasculate him. I have two memories from my childhood that are seared into my psyche that I wish weren't. One of them was we were living in Kokomo, Indiana, and my mother started dating a total psychopath, sex addict, predator. My dad was in LA working as a mailman and with plans to move back to Indiana and be with us. And then my mom divorced him and married this other man. So my dad was back in Kokomo, and we were in our house. And I remember my mother, who was a very large woman, pushing my father. We were in the back of the house, and she was screaming, and she just pushed and pushed and pushed and shrieked. And she ended up pushing him all the way to the curb as she screamed, and he just took it. And I remember then my grandparents picking us up, and my older brother, who's less than a year older than me, and he just reached over, and we were all huddled up, 6 kids, and he was the sixth one, but he wasn't acting like a kid, and he was holding us because we had seen ugly bullying rage from our mother pointed at our father, and it was horrifying. She didn't hit him, but it was just the fury of rage in the eyes of a scary, raging borderline, and my dad was more the codependent empath. The other memory that seared into my mind, we were at a drive-in movie theater, the whole family in a VW bus, and my dad was trying to locate the reverse gear because he was going forward and bumping into another car or a fence or something, and my mother was just shrieking, "Sam! Sam!" And it was like a blood-curdling scream just knifing through my soul. I've never had, in 30 years, I've never had somebody come in as a couple named Pat and Sam, or their parents, Pat and Sam. I think I might have some transference if a Pat and a Sam came in. But part of how you as a man develop your identity is how your mom treats your dad and how your dad allows your mom to treat him. And so I thought growing up that I had a lot of strength and I was a superhero. But ultimately, the truth about me was I turned out to be like my father, that I've been involved with horrific women who were verbally abusive and disrespectful and emasculating and devaluing, and I put up with it. So that's part of the heritage of having a borderline mom. Your dad will get emasculated and devalued, and then you'll carry some of that with you. Number 3, they will triangle to you. What I mean by triangling is that let's say they're mad at somebody. Instead of going and confronting that person, they will ventilate their spleen onto you, and they sort of hold you hostage. I tell my clients when they come in, it's your hour. You're paying me $175 an hour, but that doesn't entitle you to come in and vent and triangle about your husband or your wife or even your parents. You can come in and vulnerably share your pain all day, but you can't come in and just tell me what a terrible person somebody is without doing work on yourself. I tell them my charge for ventilating and triangling is $1,000 an hour. So knock yourself out if you want to do that. It isn't going to help you. It's unpleasant for me. But borderlines are angry people. They make enemies. They're full of drama. They're very victim-y. Not all borderlines. I'm not talking about you. Don't send me a message saying that I projected. I'm not projecting. I'm just saying that most borderlines will ventilate and triangle you into conflict, especially about the opposite parent. And many times my mother would make derogatory remarks about my father and would hold me hostage. One of the first things that I did in my recovery process was to teach her not to ventilate and triangle to me. And she eventually caught on to where she'd be on the phone, she'd start to ventilate and triangle, and she'd go, "Oh, I'm not supposed to triangle, I'm sorry," and she'd quit doing it. Number 4, somebody who has borderline personality, they're real fragile, they're in a lot of pain, and so when they become vulnerable sometimes, they sort of turn into their wounded little kid, but they might do that with you when you're 10 or when you're 13. I was 13 and my mom broke down and I became her counselor. And that probably determined my career for me, because I've been a rescuer of borderline women my whole career. But at a time when they should be there for you and you should be free to be a kid, you're being their friggin' therapist and you're caretaking, and you have an abnormal addictive compassion to healing the wounds of your parent, which is not a good thing, obviously. The fifth way a borderline mother can harm you is there's a great deal of financial chaos. They're constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul. And as a child, you have this sense that don't be a burden. Don't have needs. Don't be a burden, because if you have too many needs, then you might be taking away from the needs of the other kids in the family. Number 6, a borderline mother has to be the most moody creature on the planet. In that poem that I wrote for her funeral, I talked about my mother was sunshine, roses, and a thundercloud. And you never know what you're going to get. For Forrest Gump, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. You could get the sweetest, kindest, apparently most nurturing woman on the planet for 10 minutes, and then she can change on a dime and be furious, and then she can change on a dime and be sad, and then she can change on a dime and be anxious. She's not going to go back to being sweet as pie, though. It's not that quick of a shift. But you grow up walking on eggshells. You grow up really nervous that things can go to hell in a handbasket at any moment. There is no safety emotionally to just be able to relax and be with a safe person, because they can change so quickly like this, and it ripples through your system. Number 7, a borderline mom, they can really be unsafe even during sacred moments. I remember it was my rehearsal night when I got married as a young man, as a 21-year-old back in 1981, 22-year-old. I was having the rehearsal for the wedding, and I said the wrong thing, and my mother just shamed me and scowled at me and punished me. The fact that it was the day before I was getting married didn't really matter. There aren't really sacred moments. What's interesting is in my second marriage, which took place on May the 7th, my mother's representative, since she has passed on, a brother, did the same thing at the wedding, became reactive and disrespectful and abusive just minutes before I walked down the aisle. Number 8, when it comes to doing the chores of motherhood, generally borderline moms are inconsistent cooks. They are inconsistent house cleaners. They don't tend to have OCD. My mom was sort of, there's this myth that many times your parents try to foist upon you, and the myth was she was a great cook. She had about 3 things that she could cook well. She was good at biscuits and gravy, stuffed green peppers, and fudge. But to be a great cook, you got to cook every day, or pretty often. And she was like sort of above it all. She was busy doing important things, and she didn't cook to nurture the children. She cooked to get narcissistic supply and attention. Number 9, a borderline is always going to have sort of a house of cards going on. In their drama, they're going to have issues, and they're going to have legal issues. And I remember the woman I was married to for 27 years, wonderful woman. She actually was called upon by the FBI to testify against my mother, which sent my mother to jail. This was just before the wedding. So my poor future wife got caught up in the drama, and my impish, childish mother got sent off to jail, but she called it summer camp. And it was just a local jail, and it was just for the summer, and she went off and did crafts all summer. And so there are positives to borderline personality disorder. There's a childlike, impish spirit that does bring joy. They might turn on you and cut your gizzard out 30 seconds later, but there was this joyful part of my mother. Number 10, a borderline mom isn't going to have a filter. So let's say you're there with a couple of your friends. Your mom might rage and just act crazy in front of your friends and just mortify you. You guys remember that? Being humiliated and mortified by the rage of your mother. Number 11, my mom didn't really see me. She didn't see my gifts. She didn't see my potential. She didn't think I was very smart. She saw herself. A good parent really pays attention to who a child is and what their gifts are, and can sort of channel them in the right direction, not control them, but just help them hone their gifts and abilities. That happened for me in the 8th grade. My 8th grade social science teacher, Joe Valashich was his name. No, Joe Genovese. I'm sorry, Joe Genovese. And he picked up that I had a lot of skills and ability in social sciences, and that turned out to be true. And that's the first little bit of self-esteem that I got in school, was in the 8th grade, being affirmed by my 8th grade teacher, Joe Genovese. So, but my mom, she didn't see me. She saw her. Number 12, the last one, is she had just a really high sense of entitlement, and she didn't do much housework, and the house was always messy. I remember going over to one of my friend's house, Troy Smith, and his mother was hardworking, and everything was in its place, and the house was immaculate, and there weren't any cockroaches. And I remember being so jealous that his mom was a mom. His mom was present and nurturing and giving, versus the kind of mom that I had, who was sort of a CEO bully who really didn't serve. She called our family a loving dictatorship, and as I look back, it was more of a dictatorship. There wasn't a whole lot of loving in the loving dictatorship. So these are 12 additional ways that I personally was wounded by a borderline mother. I hope this is helpful for you in scrutinizing your own childhood experiences. Many times, if you go through something as a child and you go through it alone and you don't hear somebody else's story, you internalize it and you shame yourself. And you don't realize how much you've been damaged. So I hope the sharing of this story is helpful for you and those of you who might have some characteristics and qualities toward the lighter end of borderline personality disorder. If you're doing things that are harmful to your children, then take a look at that and get some treatment. Find a really good therapist who can work with you and struggle with you and help to reparent you. DBT is recognized as a really effective therapy for borderline personality disorder. You're not a bad person, but there's work to be done to help stabilize your personality so you can be a consistent, safe point of nurturing and attachment for your children. But nobody here is shaming you. We all hurt our children. Everybody hurts their children. Everybody's children are going to sit on a therapy couch sometime between 35 and 45, or they should. I told my kids from an early age, you guys are sort of screwed, with me as your dad, you're going to have some issues. You're going to need some therapy down the road. So I hope this has been helpful for people who are trying to sort out borderline personality disorder from a parenting side, from a mothering side. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We've passed 20,000. It may not be a lot for some folks, but we were excited about that. Also, I have written a new book called The Alchemist. We Turn Narcissistic Abuse into Gold. And it's basically my story of the past 2 years and 2 months of recovery from Narcissistic Abuse Syndrome. So you can download a copy of that either on Kindle, or you can download a copy from familytreecounseling.com. So I am off to the office to see some clients. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for watching. God bless.